over 8 feet long. This guy, and really heavy, swam for a valiant hour and 13 minutes. Biggest snake so far, and that's the third longest swim we've seen in a snake. This is a brown tree snake. They're crafty creatures that are active at night and live and hunt in trees. The US Department of Agriculture estimates they outnumber people 10 to 1 on Guam, with as many as 2 million of them on island. And these snakes have wrought all kinds of ecological and economic damage. For example, snakes getting in electrical infrastructure has caused thousands of power outages around Guam over the years, costing millions of dollars in losses and in management to find ways to make our grid more snake-proof. My name is Farron Tyron, and I am a Guam-based content creator online in which I go by the Guam Guy. It is not known when exactly brown tree snakes came to Guam. Best estimates are sometime during or shortly after World War II, in which Guam was occupied by Japanese forces from 1941 and retaken by American forces in 1944. And with all the ships and cargo moving around, brown tree snakes somehow found their way to Guam. As their population grew, we saw both near and total local extinctions of the forest birds they fed on. Without birds to disperse seeds, the jungles of Guam cannot regenerate as well as they have for eons before, according to the Ecology of Bird Loss Project. Thankfully, a few surviving birds were captured and brought into captivity to ensure the survival of their species, and with the dream of releasing them into the wild once again. Short of totally eradicating brown tree snakes, a number of projects have been in the works to suppress them in controlled areas. One such project on Guam involves using a helicopter to shoot thousands of dead mice with poison pills at a rate of 4 shots per second into the jungle canopy for the snakes to find and eat. After decades in captivity, some birds were released on islands without snakes. Hafaday Guam. That is a sea heg. The Guam kingfisher, or sea heg for example, made huge news last year for their historic release on Palmyra. Back home, about 1.5 miles away from Guam's southernmost village, is the island of Dano, where the flightless Guam rail, or Coco, were released because the 95-acre island is snake-free, or at least it was. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we were shaken to learn that brown tree snakes were found on the island. And this was especially disturbing because not long before this, the Coco celebrated a big victory as they were declared no longer extinct in the wild, thanks precisely to years of conservation efforts. This led to a new civic organization called Friends of Island Dano, who began organizing weekly evening searches on the island to find and remove snakes. This is how it's done. Best I can do, guys. You're right on it. This is a brown tree snake tiara. Oh, it's totally wrapped around my eyes. But this begs the question, how did the snakes get there? The most likely scenario is they hitched rides on boats going to the island. And when I previously reported this, one viewer commented that snakes swam the distance to the island. However, there is no scientific evidence to support that this species of snake can swim any meaningful distance. So I figured I'd do some tests of my own. Hafaday Guam, this is a brown tree snake, and today we're gonna see how far it can swim. I conducted swimming trials of 15 snakes ranging from 53 centimeters to 253 centimeters. This is a Melesso pescador snake, releasing in 3, 2, 1. I observed that every snake I tested instinctively knew how to swim, which makes sense since they may have had to cross rivers in their native range. The question then becomes for how long and far they can swim, and that depends on the individual. Among 15 trials, swim times varied from as little as 3 minutes to as long as 2 hours. The shortest distance to Dano is 1.5 miles, and a couple of snakes swam around 2 miles. Another observation is that instead of continuously swimming, most snakes took breaks. They'd stop swimming, let some of their body dangle below water, and keep their heads above water. This demonstrates the snake's ability to use buoyancy from the air in their lungs to keep their heads up and let the remainder of their body rest. Just a quick note, to treat the snakes as humanely as possible, my protocol was to retrieve them after 10 continuous seconds of their heads being submerged. Next, one snake was allowed to return to land and then re-enter the water.
We did position ourselves to block the snake from going further into shore, but instead of staying in place or being aggressive to us, the snake made the choice to re-enter the water and swim along the beach, which shows there could be other conditions snakes might choose to enter the ocean. Finally, some snakes will board floating objects. I cannot say if it's intelligence or intuition, but rather than just trying to always swim to land, some snakes recognize floating objects and will seek safety on them, even if it's a kayak with a human on board. I presented my experiment at the Brown Tree Snake Conference on Guam in 2024. Off the day, Guam. This is the Brown Tree Snake Conference. Yes, there are Brown Tree Snake conferences. All right, now we're going to begin. Even though my experiment was backyard science, because no one has reported doing this before, my results and observations are novel, defy some expectations, and could inform bona fide institutional research. Though this was an independent project done in my personal time as an agriculture and life sciences student at the University of Guam, I am very much vested in understanding and advancing the sphere of knowledge of Guam's ecology. During and after the conference, I learned that brown tree snake swimming ability has been a question long on the minds of people that work in the field. I began the experiment with two goals. Aside from the snake swimming trials, I wanted to reignite public interest about a problem that has largely faded into the background. There are now generations of people on Guam who cannot remember seeing birds, and growing up with snakes has become the new norm. With the efforts of the Guam Department of Agriculture, Friends of Islandano, the helicopter treatments, the SEAC release in Palmyra, and another new project with the National Park Service, it's looking more but cautiously hopeful that we can create relatively safe spaces from snakes for more birds to live in the wild on Guam. For these projects to be successful, there must be deep community support, and if there was ever a time to rekindle public interest, then that time is now. Sen Saina Moasi, Guahusi, Farron, the Guam Guy, Tyron.